Welcome, and thanks for stopping by. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to our podcast on one of your favorite platforms, I'm glad you're here. At this time, I would like to thank our partners and sponsors for their dedication to helping the show to grow. We cannot do what we do without their help.
Hey everybody, you reached the Millennium Beat. I'm glad that you stopped in today. Today I have on the computer Stephany Ann. Stephany, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Okay, let's get to know Stephany a little bit better and let our audience get to know you a little bit more. Stephany, where did you come from?
Well, I am currently living in Oregon. I've been raised in Oregon, and I just recently moved back from Florida.
Oh, wow. What part of Florida were you living in?
I was in Cape Coral, Fort Myers,
Cape Coral. Fort Myers,
remember Hurricane Ian?
Yes. Yeah.
I was
Okay. Oh, so yeah,
was right there.
Right there for that. Yeah, we just had a couple of hurricanes go through, and we've been pretty good. I've lived up. I'm Central Florida. I'm about 30 miles outside of Orlando and about 35 miles outside of Daytona Beach. So I'm right there off of I-4, the worst road in the country.
Oh, right on.
So I don't know about. So tell me a little bit. I'm curious because I've never been there, not yet, but I will probably one day. What is it like in Oregon? What is it like there?
Oregon is magical. It's
Is it?
beautiful. It's green.
Oh, wow.
We have the mountains. We have the ocean.
Wow.
It's not like Florida.
No.
It's rocky, wavy, cold, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, Florida is a little warm. Yeah, so you have that. That's pretty cool. Now, I remember my schooling. It's been so long since I was in school. Oregon is right below Washington State?
Yep, it's right between Washington and California.
California. Okay, so it's California, Oregon, and then Washington. So that's cool. Okay. So you've been there. So you grew up there, you said, and then you moved, and you're back there again. So so tell me a little bit about what it was like for a little Stephany growing up. I mean, what was it like,
Growing up in Oregon, well, it was.
Well, it doesn't have to be specifically in Oregon, but just growing up in general. What was it like as you growing up? What was it like?
Oh, it was great. I have 3 other sisters, and we are really close, and so they're my best friends, and
cool.
We had our girlfriends. We always had a house full of girls because, a big, giant girl family.
Yeah.
And I played a lot of sports. I was blessed to play sports all the way through. I played sports in college. I was able to travel around the world multiple times, and I would always come back to Oregon. There was something that was very peaceful. Peaceful here, it's like where do you come back to your home? And Oregon was always the place where, even though I've been to so many beautiful places in the world, I loved flying back into Oregon. The air just felt crisp, the trees, and it's just so green. So when I think of home or kind of healing energy like that, it's Oregon, because we have the mountains and we have the ocean. And so
That's
for me,
cool.
I love going into the mountains to think, and
Hmm.
where I have 3 boys, and we're big skiers and snowboarders. So
Okay.
we love the mountains and snow, and yeah, being able to think, and then being able to go to the ocean. Notice I say ocean, not beach. In Florida, you go
Right.
to the beach. In
Right.
Oregon,
Yeah.
you go to the ocean.
Ocean. Okay.
It's cold. You're not swimming unless
Yeah.
you're under 15 and you're completely numb out there.
Well, it reminds me of Maine, because Maine, I used to live in New England. And if we went to
Oh,
New Hampshire or Maine, the water was so cold. And as soon as you touched it, your feet like froze. They become numb. But that sounds like,
yep.
it sounds like, I mean, New England and Washington is probably pretty much close to the same level, but one coast to the other coast. I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, I actually went to law school in Michigan, and one of my best
okay.
friends from law school lived up kind of near the Upper Peninsula in Alpena. And we found out that Alpena is the same parallel. So the 45th parallel runs through
Right.
Oregon and it runs
Okay.
through Michigan. But when you look at a map, it's always distorted. So it always looks
Right.
like Michigan is higher than Oregon, but it's the same
Right.
parallel.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's the same thing.
Oh,
Like
that's funny.
the water's super cold
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you might go to the ocean, but not swim in it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And well, I mean, unless you want to get really numb first
Yeah.
and,
There's probably people that do it. I mean, I can't swim in it. I mean, I'm spoiled. I've been here for 30 years. I can't swim in anything colder than 82 degrees. You know,
right. I won't go
you know.
into a swimming pool if it's at least not 88.
Oh, wow. 88. Oh, that's warm. Well, lately we haven't got it because of our weather. Our water is like, even down the Keys, were like 100 degrees. The water
Oh,
temperature. It was like
yeah.
really, really. And then over at Tampa Bay, we have a guy called Mike's Weather Page, and he does a lot of hurricane reports and stuff like that.
Yes. Yes. I follow him on Facebook.
Yeah, okay, yeah, he's a very good guy, and he was checking the water in Tampa and stuff like that, and it was like 98.6 or something. Like, it was like body temperature. I mean, it was
Yes.
crazy. I mean, I haven't heard much about it lately because there's enough hurricanes that are popping up. Luckily, I mean, they just had a Hurricane Lee that went across and missed us,
Mm-hmm.
and then went up to Nova Scotia, and Massachusetts, and up there. So it was different. So okay, so it sounds like you had a nice, your dad had a fun time because he said there was 4 women in the house, yeah, right? Your
Yep,
mother
yep.
and
And then
3.
well, there's 5. So my
Oh, there's
mom
5.
and 4 girls.
Oh, 4 girls. Okay,
4 girls.
all right.
Yep. And my dad. My dad,
4 dad.
to be fair to my dad, he's always had a shop, and we always had boy dogs.
Oh, okay. You always had boy dads. Okay, cool. All right. So basically, that was a little bit of how you grew up, and you grew up close to your siblings and stuff like that. What are some of the things some of the challenges that you might have had that led you into what you do now? What was some of did different things start happening when you were a youth, or later on in your life?
This was all later on in my life, for sure.
Okay.
And, it's only just been recently where I have been able to look at my story and really own my
Hmm.
story. So, for years, I was living a completely different story
Okay.
through a lens of why me.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until recently, like I just said, that I feel like I've really broken a pattern of calling people into my life through relationships that will teach me lessons that I still needed to learn.
Okay.
If that
All right.
makes sense, like
Yeah.
owning my story and not someone else's story, um,
Hmm.
of healing those parts within me, like the
Okay.
parts that um, felt unworthy of love,
Okay. All right.
And so, do
Yeah.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
want me to keep going with my story,
Well,
or
I got this. I get these things that pop into my head. If I, okay, you mostly speak to women, I'm assuming, your
I
audience is
do.
women. Yeah. So
Mhm.
you mostly it's on women. All right. So imagine that there's a group right now of women sitting in front of you and you're talking to them. What would you really say to them as your story to bring them from A to Z? Probably. What would you say to them if you were doing a seminar or a meeting type of thing, like you were just talking to a bunch of women that might be in a circumstances that you were, how would you give that seminar?
Yeah, well, I would start like with what I was saying with
Okay.
you. Like for years, I was living a completely different story through a lens of why me,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just feeling like I had been calling in people into my life through relationships that were meant to teach me these
Okay.
lessons of healing those parts within me that had me feeling unworthy of love. So I would call these people in who would
Mm-hmm.
reflect that back to me over and over again, through the feeling of never being enough for them, through the ways that um, these men would use manipulation or
Right.
gaslighting, um, but they would show up as actually the teacher that I needed at the
Okay.
time. And but there was a long time that I would look at my two marriages from the past, and I would see these guys as monsters. And
Mm-hmm.
over the years, I would continue to ask, why me? Like, why is all this stuff happening to me? Why is the violence happening? And I can see through a lens of me being a lawyer and
Mm-hmm.
working with women who've been in domestic violence situations and being an advocate for that. But still, these things were still happening to me. And
Okay.
there was a part of me that was drawn into the drama, drawn into the story, drawn into the victimhood. um, and it wasn't until, about after 17 years within these two marriages, and then the second marriage that I just had, which is the reason why I left Florida, was
Right.
that it ended in violence. And,
Yeah.
and when I left Florida as well, I went out boating with some friends, and, we're
Mm-hmm.
wise. We know to wear good
Right.
sunglasses. My UV sunglasses had broke, and I found myself blind in both of my eyes.
Oh, wow.
And so my eyes, and then we lost everything in the hurricane. Our whole neighborhood was under, our house was
Oh,
destroyed. And and so there were all these things over the years just happening, and it was like, why
right.
me? And I remember just sitting there, and I was literally in the rubble of this old life, and I was sitting in this mess, feeling like everything had been done to me,
Mm-hmm.
blaming these two men who had inflicted all of this, and just sitting in this victimhood, asking, why me? I didn't deserve this. Nobody deserves this.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, in that moment, thinking about my eye and not being able to see, and just sitting there, I left Florida with everything I could fit into one vehicle, and my children and dog and stuff, and left. And I only made it to my sister's house in Missouri.
Okay.
And like you, I also am a person of faith as well. I believe in God. And
Mm-hmm.
um, just sitting there, because for 6 weeks I couldn't see,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, God, what's going on with my eye? Like, who else in the Bible or who else in history
Mm-hmm.
lost their eyesight? And what were the lessons? Like, what are you trying to say to me,
Mm-hmm.
God, in all of this? And um, so I think if we get curious and we give ourselves grace and we ask the right questions, we can start to see that there's some truth in what is manifesting all around us.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting there and hearing that I need to see my story through a different lens.
Right.
And that came with, my eyesight.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Stephany, you need to stop saying, why me? Why
Mm-hmm.
being the victim? But see
Right.
it. So I needed to shift from the victim story to the hero story of my life. And it was
Mm-hmm.
only then, when I started to shift, that I could look at these men in my life not as monsters, but as teachers, and I could start to see the lessons. And as I started to take my power back, I could see what needed to be healed, and I could see
Mm-hmm.
what needed to be released. And this
Mm-hmm.
is where, um, you can look at your situation and the things that you went through and have compassion on the people who've done things to you and have forgiveness. And so, but ultimately I could see the patterns once I was able to understand what was going on in my eyes. I could see the patterns and the shifts in the story that I thought was my reality was no longer. Like I could choose to no longer have that victim story. And as I look at so many people out there today, especially women, but also men who find themselves in narcissistic or abusive relationships, you can see that there's a pattern, and it's a pattern of unworthiness. And sometimes it's so hard, when you get caught up in these relationships with all the love bombing, the trauma bonding, and it's hard to see what is right in front of us until we lose it all.
Right.
And then we come
One of the
to the. Oh, go
ahead. I'm sorry. One of the things I was thinking about is there's two things. One of them is not women and men, both of them, is the perception of how you see yourself compared to being on a faith base is how actually God sees you. We're looking at ourselves in the mirror and we're seeing the things that are wrong with us, where God's seeing the things that are right with us. And we're taking the wrong side of the perspective. We're taking our view, not on a biblical view of how actually God sees us as children of God. So I think that's a lot of it. And also, self-talk is a major thing. It's like, I'm no good. No one will ever love me. I mean, I know people personally that I feel bad for them because it's like, look in the mirror, stop saying that, I'm overweight. No one will love me. And this is the hardest thing is, well, if somebody likes you and it's abusive, that's what you really feel love is. And you go, well, nobody else will love me. So I'll have to deal and put up with this. I'll have to put up with the crap. Whether it's emotional abuse or physical abuse, you put up with it because you're in your mind, you're not good enough for anybody else. So at least they love you, or supposedly you think they love you. So I see people doing that all the time.
Yeah, well, and I think it's, it's like you said, especially for people who find themselves in these abusive relationships with all the manipulation and the gaslighting and the criticism, the negative comments, that over time, if you don't have tools and ways to handle all of that, you just start to believe it.
Right.
And like you said, I mean, that's with God and the way God sees us, is sometimes it takes that shift, to be able to see. And I think that is some of my story as well, that God sees us through a different
eyes.
Through his eyes.
Through his eyes.
When we stop and look and pause and ask these questions in our life, and we get still and we have that moment where we can truly see ourselves the way God sees ourselves, or see ourselves for the very first time, that's when we can shift our story from a why me to a for me story. And it's in that shift for myself. I remember myself hearing God's voice saying, Stephany, it is done. You have shifted the pattern. And that's why I'm here today, is to help others see their story clear enough that they too can say, I have shifted the pattern and now it is done. And that is true freedom.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Definitely people need to change that perspective. You're talking about biblically. I'm thinking the road to Damascus was one of the stories. Saul became Paul, that he was on the horse and he got blinded, and then he had to had to go to a prophet and pray for him and stuff like that. But there was a lesson that the Lord was showing him at that time, and he became one of the greatest apostles in the Bible. I mean, he was a persecutor before that. I mean, he would kill Christians. So I mean, it's self-image. I mean, we're all, as I said, magazines, and I mean, I think girls probably get it a lot more than guys do. But it's just like, they expect you to look a certain way, to weigh a certain way, dress a certain way, and you become, a slave to society compared to what God wants. They're not modest as they should be, and and then they wonder why they get attention if they're dressing provocative. I mean, it's just, but that's what society wants you to do. They want you to dress that way and get attentions, and stuff like that. So image is a very important thing. It's one of the churches I work for. Their name is called Identity Church. It's like, our identity. If we can accept who we are in Christ, and you were saying about the image of how God sees us. There's an old saying about it. God looking at us. It's like looking at a thing of gold, and the dross, the whatever it's called, the imperfections come up, and it's drawn off. How does the master know when the goal is perfected? Is he knows when he sees his reflection. So when the Lord is looking down at you, he's seeing his son, in you. So I think that's the thing, is it's getting our image of not what the world sees us as, but as he is more important, the better image correction. I just heard that word, like image correction, is what we have to go through. Because, not everybody is thin. Not everybody has hair, it's like, stuff like that. I said, you just deal with it and just grow. Who cares? My identity is not in my hair or lack of, or my weight, or it shouldn't be,
Well, and I think that goes back to my story and what I've been saying as well. Like, your identity doesn't have to be a victim story.
Right.
Your identity is not the things that happen to you. Right. Things happen to you, but it is how you heal and recover from those things.
Right.
Like, I don't live the victim story anymore. And I will tell you, I've had everything you could imagine happen. I've been through. I lost a house in a house fire. I lost everything in a hurricane. I had my stepson's mother die.
Oh, wow.
I have a child that was born with a very rare genetic disorder. And it's like you can have all these things happen to you, but we don't have to be stuck in victimhood or stuck in a victim story. Right. We can change all of that. And that's my big thing, is helping people see their story as no longer a victim, but as empowered.
That is cool. So basically, what are you doing today to help people see that? What are some of the things that you're doing to help people see that they're not living? They don't need to live the victim life. What are you doing to help them right now?
Well, right now I'm doing a lot of podcasts. Just getting my story out there. I am creating a course right now to help people go no contact and to leave an abusive relationship or marriage safely, and what that looks like. So I'm working on that. I do have a group mentoring healing group that I am putting together and launching next month, where I take 10 people and go through, it's a 12-week program, and it goes through the exact steps that I took to heal myself. And then at the end of it, we do something very empowering. And so I'm actually leading a group to Peru. And so we're going to go to Peru and do the Inca Trail. And, it's just stepping into everything that we've talked about. and the healing journey. And this is like the empowerment part. I also am an EFT practitioner. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's emotional freedom techniques. It's a modality that has been used to help people process their heavy emotions, their big traumas and their little traumas. But it's a way to kind of rewrite your brain in a sense by tapping into that. So we sit with the big heavy emotions, and then we release them, and then we tap into the person that we are becoming. And so I work with individuals one-on-one doing that, and also in group classes, and I'm working on videos and stuff.
Well, that sounds cool. Now, some of that stuff you said is in the work, but if somebody wanted to get a hold of you and said, they something you said triggered something in their head and said, I need to talk to you, what kind of places can people get a hold of you at?
I am on Facebook as Stephany Ann, and I have just started a Facebook page there as well. It's called The Door of Freedom, and it's about walking through these different doors as we are healing and shifting our perspective and our story. And I'm also at stephanyannSpeaks.com, so people can email me directly there. So I still am working on my website and getting other things set up. So those are. So
you're still working on the website. So, But what I'll do is I'll put a link to your Facebook page. That way, they can get a hold of you. So, cool. I always, these interviews that I do from, all over the country, sometimes they're short, which is fine. They're just try to get people introduced to you. And, if we have a topic that maybe we can, address later on, we can do that. I always tell my guests that you're always welcome back. All you have to do is just email me or call me and say, hey, I have some things I would like to talk about. I have no problem, booking guests, repeat guests. If we don't do an hour show. Every show is a little different. I always tell people sometimes our show is like 25, 30 minutes, and sometimes it's an hour. So it really, it depends. I don't just want to talk just to talk. I want people to understand a little bit what you do and just get people introduced to you. So that's pretty cool. So, and any closing remarks that you want to tell people that be watching or listening? And is there anything you want to say to them?
Well, the big thing is that if you are stuck in an old story of why me, if all these things keep happening in your life and you're constantly hearing yourself say, why me? I don't deserve this. Why is all this stuff happening to me? It really takes you shifting that mindset and shift it to a for me, and look for the lessons, look for the teachers that have been in your life. And I'm saying this as I have two ex-husbands that were not very good people, but I prefer to refer to them as teachers because they have taught me things. So look for those lessons. Shift your thinking from a why me to a for me. Shift the pattern. And then when the pattern is shifted, you can say it is done, and you will have true freedom again.
Okay. Well, that's cool. All right, that's good. We can close up on that. So, everybody, I'd like to thank you for joining today. Stephany Ann, thank you very much for being here and being my guest today. Appreciate it. So, everybody else, again, you're welcome. Everybody else, we'll see you next week. Just remember, at the Millennium Beat, we like to encourage the world one story at a time.
This has been a Millennium Beat LLC production. Views and opinions of the guest are not always the views and opinions of the Millennium Beat LLC. Check us out on social media, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and TikTok at the Millennium Beat, or on Twitter at Millennium_Beat. If you would like to partner with us to reach the world, go to our website for more information. You can go to themillenniumbeat.com or tmb2000.net. Your financial support is greatly appreciated. We couldn't do all we do without your support. The Millennium Beat just updated our website from the ground up. Check it out at themillenniumbeat.com, or you can get there by using millenniumbeat.com or tmb2000.net, where you'll be redirected to the millenniumbeat.com's homepage. I want to thank Mass Inbound for their awesome work on our website. If you're looking for somebody to build your site, I recommend them. You can reach them at massinbound.com. That is massinbound.com. These are some of the things that you can find on our website. Homepage. You can watch our latest YouTube video or listen to our audio podcast. Also listed are some of the platforms our audio podcast is on. You'll find out when the next podcast will air and who the guest will be. On the top right, you will find two red buttons, Learn How to Help and Become a Guest. Under Learn How to Help, you can become a partner, sponsor, contributor, or contribute to the future Millennium Bus. You can give one time or monthly recurring. The choice is yours. The other button is Be a Guest. Click it, go to the form, and fill it out, and we will get back to you. We would love to hear your story. Click the About Us drop-down where you'll find stats, where we are reaching people, and to find more information on our sponsors. Click on the podcast drop-down, then click on the calendar tab where it will tell you when the shows will air and who will be on them. Or if you need to know about any meetups of the Millennium Beat staff, partners, or listeners. Also, there might be on the calendar an event at which the Millennium Beat staff will be at. Click the Guest tab for all previous guests, links to their website, social media pages, and any store they might have. Click the Forms drop-down. There you'll find a release, Be a Guest, or Become a Sponsor form.